Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Launched in 2022 and made of grade 5 titanium, this is the Laurent Ferrier Sport Auto. So Laurent Ferrier created a sport tourbillon back in 2019 that cost an arm and a leg. This one, merely some fingers and toes. The nice thing about this watch is that it is a worthwhile entry in the integrated bracelet sports watch genre. The timepiece, easy to wear, easy to live with, and still giving you what Laurent Ferrier does so well, which is fine finish and exclusivity. There have been some sports watches in the genre, such as the Lug-to-lug Hector and the C in the Continuum from Romain Gaultier, that feel like they fall a little bit short of the brand's standards and might have been rushed to market to meet a price point and hit a volume target. This feels like a Laurent Ferrier, and it works like a sports watch, so it's the best of both worlds. Cushion case and a very pronounced cushion profile. It's 41.5 millimeters in diameter. It's 13.1 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip. We're just talking about the case, 47.7 millimeters. You take the first link on each side, the total distance across the wrist is 51.9. On the wrist, the watch, which is made all of titanium and sapphire, is almost toy-like. Now, it will fit under a cuff. Surprisingly, it's not that thick, and it's well stepped and sloped, so it'll slide underneath a dress sleeve. And if you look at where the lugs are on my wrist, this down-the-barrel shot reveals you could probably wear this on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference quite easily. My wrist is 16. The bracelet looks good. It doesn't look generic in any way. It seems like it was expressly tailored to match the taper of this case and the aesthetic of the watch. You can see there's quite a bit of faceting on these outer and center links, and that's one of the advantages of grade 5 titanium. It takes a better polish than the grade 2 stuff. Also, while being hypoallergenic and lighter than steel the way grade 2 is, it's also more resistant to scratching, which I welcome here. So we have these nicely beveled shoulders all the way down. Note that they're satinated on the flank, but they're beveled on their shoulder, going down to the clasp. And you can see we have removable links fixed by screws, that we have a few of them, and that we have an intermediate sized link built in there for fine tuning. The clasp is titanium. It's a twin trigger release, so it's a very secure sports style clasp that's going to stay shut until you press both, not one, but both triggers. So that's what you expect to see on a sports watch. I will opine that the clasp itself, once it's open, feels like the only part of the watch that's really off the shelf. I've seen this clasp design many, many times. This was purchased, not made in-house. But that's not a bad thing. Laurent Ferrier is an établisseur. They purchase all their parts. It's just that the clasp itself looks like something you would find on many other watches. It's a good piece, and it's invisible when the watch is on the wrist. It's just something I thought I would note. The crown is unsigned and onion profiled, a nod to the kind of vintage watches that Laurent Ferrier, the man, spent his time building in school and then restoring after his school days. It is a screw down, and the watch is 120 meters water resistant, which is a huge advantage over a lot of the watches in this genre that may have the sporting look, but don't have the sporting water resistance, and that includes integrated bracelet sports watches by Romain Gaultier, Lug-to-lug, FP Journe, and many others. This is a true aquatic sports watch, so swimmable down to 120 meters. It's also very well loomed. When you unscrew the crown, you realize that the watch has one thing you want and lacks another that you might miss. So we do have a quick set system for the date. We can rapidly cycle the date. We do not, however, have a hacking seconds function. As you can see, the watch continues to tick, but the setting is very, very precise. There's a little dead angle, and you could feel the quality of the keyless works and the motion works here. The dial is handsome and nuanced. You can see they went with a crosshair center, they went with alpha hands, dart-style indices, and a granular dial base that's a nice matte gradient fade from light at the center to dark at the edge, with really extended and legible radial-style individual indices. It's a nicely balanced dial, and you can see how elaborately they tapered the aperture of the date window into the dial to counterbalance the index at 9 o'clock, so really well done on that count. And then you can see Sport Auto lacquered down there with a sunken sub-register, a Lancet-style seconds hand, and an azurage pattern. On the reverse side, we have a movement that is derived from the micro rotor, but it's got some changes. So there are some changes here when you compare it to, for example, the classic micro rotor. The bridges here are a little bit less complex, and you don't have the double direct impulse escapement from the Gallet later classic micro rotor. That said, you get most of the technical capabilities. You get a platinum mass, which, as you can see, features the philosophy of the watch's manufacturer, and a platinum winding rotor is actually an upgrade over what you get on the standard Gallet or classic micro rotor, so it's a more efficient winder. There is a very, very sensitive Paul-based winding system here with a jeweled staff. It's a silent winder. We have a 4 Hz beat rate, which is higher than the standard classic micro rotor and makes it more appropriate to a sports watch, as it's less likely that concussion will change the timing of the watch. Adjusted to 6 positions, 1 more than a standard chronometer. That's the gold standard for movement adjustment. It pivots on 31 joules, and it's free sprung for durability against shock. Plus, you can see it has an overcoil hairspring still, so in every position on the wrist, it will be isochronous in its operation and keep very even time. In terms of how the movement's simplified aesthetically, really just a few changes. We don't have the stripes of the full-fat Gallet micro rotor. You don't get the elaborate click spring. You don't get the elaborate interior angle profiling of the train bridge, but you do get one at center, as well as over the center wheel. You can see where the creases of the 2 bevels come together in that cleft line from top to bottom, and you can see how broad and rounded these bevels are. These are the kind of bevels you expect from Laurent Ferrier. You can also see we have the same degree of beveling inside the jewel sinks. We have mirror black polishing on the disengagement mechanism for the automatic winder. We have mirror polishing on the bridge for the balance, as well as on the stud holder, as well as all of the screw heads, which include chamfered slots as well as circumference. And if you look on the edge of the bridge for the rotor, you can see it's been beveled on its side as well. Look carefully and you can see that there's even a little bit of beveling inside the spokes of the satin finished wheels. So it's quite impressive. All of this with a 3-day power reserve. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.